Center in Post Falls. The State Department of Corrections proposes building a 100-plus bed halfway house for felons in Post Falls. What is the status of this project, and do you support it? How many of you know about it? Oh, Mary raised her hand. You're up.
Well, isn't that fun? Okay. I was on the budget committee for the prior 2 years, and that's why I know about it. I know that they are planning that as part of the correctional system, and I don't know any details, Don. I know nothing about how much it will actually cost because these were estimated figures, but perhaps Representative Amador has heard about it. He's on the budget committee now.
All I'm familiar with it at this point was that the governor mentioned it in his State of the State address. So I heard it, and we haven't dealt with the Department of Corrections budget yet, so we haven't heard specific details on that particular project. So I can't say whether I support it or not because I don't know enough about it. I would imagine it might also be discussed in Judiciary and Rules Committees as well, because they deal with Department of Corrections. So, stay tuned for next month. Come back next month, and we'll probably have a lot more information on that particular.
There you go. And we'll be meeting in Post Falls at the Senior Center, so it'll be completely appropriate. Senator Rick.
And I don't know anything about the Pro Center, but just one thing that everybody needs to keep in mind. What percent of the people who go to prison eventually come back out of prison? Does anybody know? 97%. And so those 97% of the people who go to prison, I don't know that we want them released directly from prison back out on the street. Sometimes they need a halfway house, or they immediately reviolate and go back in. And so I don't know if it's a good location. I don't know if it's, I really don't know any details, but I know, having worked on corrections issues for a number of years, that we have to have the facilities to deal with people. We need to do a better job of sentencing people. We need to do a better job of actually rehabilitating people. The word penitentiary comes from the word repent. And that was the original purpose of putting people in.
That should be a mandatory. And I also want to know the electrical wiring that's going on and hurting people.
So anyway, that's my only point is, we can't be, because we don't want prisoners in our neighborhood, in my opinion, is not a sufficient reason to be against something like this. And I get the sentiment, but there is a place, and this is maybe the wrong place, but there needs to be a place for, as we try to restore people's lives that have made mistakes, there needs to be a place to do that. So I just want to make that point.
Thank you.
I own a bar that is about 2 blocks.
Sir, can you write it on a comment so we need to have it come from here, please? Thank you. So if you have a question or response, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so I'm sure there's plenty of people in here just on tenterhooks waiting for this stuff to come out. So, John Green, would you care to talk about the bill that you and Representative Heather Scott have introduced? Because that's pretty much what these are all addressing.
First of all, I want to say I probably misspoke at the beginning when I said that this bill was one of the most important things that I'll be involved in this session. It is absolutely the most important. So I made no secret when I was running. Can you hear me now? Thank you. I made no secret about the fact when I was running that I was absolutely committed to ending the murder of preborn Idahoans. Now, first and foremost, I want people to understand that this legislation is not about overturning some arbitrary federal Supreme Court case. This bill is about sovereignty of the state of Idaho and enforcing our statutes about the murder. Sorry. Of the most vulnerable segment of our population. And I wanted to say also that thank goodness that there weren't lawyers that brought this forth. I'm very honored that Representative Scott asked me to be involved in co-sponsoring this bill, and we all owe, those of us that are concerned about these unborn children, owe a huge debt of gratitude to the people that have been promoting the abolition of human abortion at great cost and time expense to themselves for many, many years. And why this bill has not been proposed well before this point in history is beyond me. But we're here now, and we're going to enforce our state sovereignty. Abortion is murder under Idaho code, and we need to start prosecuting this murder.
Here, here. And as a follow-up, the request is that each of the rest of our representatives would respond to this, please.
I'm going to start, if you don't mind, Paul. I looked at the bill, and my seatmate at the other end of the table talks about why this hasn't been done before. But we did this with nullification in 2011, and I headed that up. This bill specifically addresses protecting officers and individuals acting on behalf of the state from federal prosecution if a law is contrary to that which we've passed here in Idaho. That is, in and of itself, nullification. It's important that we begin to flex our sovereignty. We all know that, both in terms of the finance situation, in terms of the Fed and the rest of the things that are doing there, and certainly the Supreme Court, decisions that force, basically legislate for us. And it's almost to the point sometimes where I really believe the only thing we're there for is to rubber stamp whatever the executive branch insists that we do. If it's the judges, it's even worse. We don't have to rubber stamp it. It just becomes law. So this fight will continue. This particular bill is right in the face. And my job has been, I have been tasked as a member of State Affairs to address the language so that it doesn't appear that we're giving the finger to the feds. But Representative Green's point, we all agree on, and those of you that have been electing us all these years recognize pro-life is the centerpiece of our position here. And why is that? Because death is the centerpiece of the other party.
Thank you. I'm going to be very short with this because I have not seen the bill, but I'm 100% pro-life, always have been. I've been endorsed by Idaho Chooses Life. I've carried bills on the floor for pro-life groups, and I believe totally in the right of the life of the preborn. I believe in choice, and let me tell you why I believe in choice. Because the choice that anyone has is before they have relations that would end up in pregnancy. Once you make the choice to have that relation, then you are responsible for the outcome.
I too believe that abortion is murder. Representative Mendai was kind enough to share the bill. It's the first time I've seen it. I got about halfway through it as I scanned it here, waiting for my turn to answer the question. Until we change the culture of death that's accepted in this country, we cannot restore the soul of our country. I say that, you know, America was damaged at the beginning because we preserved slavery. And it took a civil war to end the sin of slavery. And then it took nearly 100 years for us to treat those of African American descent not everybody, but as a country, to treat them appropriately. This is not, you have to change people's hearts. It's not something that will be changed by one law, but you have to change the law, I think, to make progress in some cases in order to change the hearts. And so I think it's important that we move in the direction not only of establishing in code that abortion is murder, but also establishing that as a state, we still have sovereignty to do what we think is best as established under the Constitution of the United States.
And I agree with everything's been said to this point. Idaho Code actually defines murder, 18-4001, and it basically, it includes a fetus or an embryo. Then you have a contradiction, because later on we do carve out an exception and allow doctors to perform an abortion, which does kill, and by our definition, by Idaho Code definition, which does determine that the taking of the life of a fetus or an embryo is murder in this state. Then we carve out an exception and say that doctors can do it. So this needs to be looked at, because there's a conversation that needs to be had here. And so that, once again, I support this. I think it's high time we had this discussion, and so here we go.
Looking around the room, I know I've spoken to a lot of you people, either individually or as members of Idaho Republican pachyderm clubs. And I passed out my rank cards to 1,000 people personally. And the very first item on that rank card is that I will defend life. So I'm a very strong pro-life supporter. I'm supported by Idaho Chooses Life. A year ago, just about a year ago today, I had a granddaughter born the day after the anniversary of Roe versus Wade, and it really made me think of the contrast between the ability of having a beautiful granddaughter born that day, the day after the remembrance of the anniversary of the 1973 Supreme Court opinion, not decision. It's our opinion. Just because the Supreme Court rules on something, that's a legal opinion, and in some cases it's not binding. Along those lines, I am 100% pro-choice. Okay, that may come as a shock to some of you. I would like to give the fetus a choice to be born.
Thank you very much. I agree with the sentiments that we've had down the line. I have not also seen a copy of the bill, but I think it's important. I did talk, when I saw the headline, I did talk to John on the chamber floor, and I thought, you know, this is addressing pro-life, this is addressing murder, and it addresses states' rights. And I think those are three things that we take in combination in one bill. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't been brought up this way before also. So as a pro-life individual, I think this is going to be a very, very interesting vote. So.
Thanks for the question. I haven't seen Representative Green's bill. I did see him on TV though. Talking about it. This is such a difficult issue, having a 16-month-old baby. Anytime I look at him, it's not a choice. You know, I mean, that is a wonderful life, and I can't imagine extinguishing that for any person. And I was actually just talking to my wife on the phone a couple days ago, and I haven't actually seen the legislation, but I think there was a bill passed in New York that would allow abortions full term. And it just absolutely killed me. So, you know, certainly supportive of pro-life issues, but I haven't seen the bill, so we'll withhold judgment until that moves through the process.
I just wanted to kind of wrap up on some of the comments. first of all, and I apologize, I didn't mean to insinuate that any of our pro-life legislators have not been working hard on this issue. Because I know, especially my seatmate, Representative Vito, I know he's been an advocate for unborn babies for a long time. He supports those causes. We're 100% agreement on that. One of the points that he brings out is a reality of the legislative process. I'm not known as the guy who polishes the edges and tries to be sensible to what might or might not offend somebody. My position is I just got to tell you what I think, and you take it the way you take it. Representative Vito is a good seatmate because he's helping me to learn how to polish those edges. It's funny for two lawyers to have that interaction.
Yeah, he's calmed down a lot over the years.
Right. And so what I keep telling people, the overwhelming response to this legislation, not just from my constituents, but from across Idaho, and now even nationally, is overwhelming support. What's consistent with the people that are against this proposal is it's an emotional thing for them without any regard to science or the life of the baby. It's about hate. It's about getting their way. It's about hating God. And because of that, I and actually all of the pro-life representatives in the House and the senators are going to be subject to that hate. And I'm up for that challenge. My response to these people is to try to be measured and point out this is about sovereignty. This is not about a Supreme Court decision, and this is about protecting Idahoans. And I'll maintain that course. And if anybody is interested, I'm happy to share some of the rather humorous names I've been called. Yesterday was a worthless meat sack, and then a dumb donkey, but he didn't use the word donkey, so anyway.
Donkey's a very smart.
I just want to make an additional comment on this topic because I think it's really important. Those of us who support pro-life may differ in whether the wording in this bill is where we want this to be right now. And so I want to go on record as saying I'm very pro-life, and I will support any legislation that moves us forward in that, but I do not want to see young mothers be put in jail. That is just not the answer to this.
Okay, sorry, I have to comment on that. And I can't say I really have a disagreement with Senator Souza on this, but putting mothers in jail is not the issue here. The issue here is what is murder in Idaho? And if we have a murder statute, we need to enforce it. Now, that's a common complaint that I hear. Well, you're saying you want to put mothers in jail for murder if they abort their baby. We have a due process for criminal matters, and that due process includes law enforcement and a county prosecutor and investigation, and then a decision whether to prosecute. And that's an important process. And part and parcel of that process is the ability for a prosecutor at their own discretion to say there are mitigating circumstances that would tend to say maybe punishment should be altered in this particular case, and they can act on that, maybe ask for lesser punishment. But we cannot take into consideration that because we might end up putting some guilty party who's committed a crime in prison just because they're a mother. To me, there is no person with a greater duty and ability to protect the life of an unborn child than the mother.
Here, here.